Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well, especially in this hot summer. Like, it's unbearable. I have a fan right next to me all the time, and I'm still sweating my ass off. So we got two things to talk about. The close range meta, especially with how different and unique it is in Season 5, and something I did not expect to be talking about in this video, but I'm glad it happened. So around 3 days ago, this was posted on YouTube.
I learned this and quite a few other things from watching B-Boy Broccoli's YouTube video on mouse and keyboard movement in Warzone 2. I think it's one of the best videos out there, so you should definitely check it out, even if you play on controller.
And to make things even more magical, the video that Dreamstrike is talking about, the one that I made, was actually inspired by him. I was watching Dreamstrike for days upon days before I even thought about making that video or producing it in that way. So having a shout out is just great, but having it from the person that inspired me to make that video in the first place is just mind-blowing. So thank you for Dreamstrike for acknowledging my video and giving it that massive shout out, and thank you to everyone that has came to the channel since then. More than 500 subscribers in less than 3 days. Like, to say that I'm happy with what's going on is an understatement, so seriously, thank you to everyone. Now back to the main thing. So Season 5 is finally here, and the biggest impact it has on the weapon buffs and nerfs was in the SMG category. With the MX9, the Vel 46, better known as the MP7, and the BASP getting major buffs, and the Fennec getting a meh buff. As for the Lachman sub, or better known as the MP5, and the Minibak got heavily nerfed. Which also means that the ISO 45 did not get touched. One important thing though, just because a weapon got buffed does not mean that it's time to use that weapon, and just because a weapon got nerfed does not mean that you should just stop using it at all. So what is the close range meta? What is the fastest TTK? And what is the best SMG out there right now? And what is the best loadout for it? So strap along, because this time it's not one SMG. It's actually 2 or even 3. I'll explain why this is the case this time and how you can pick the best weapon that works for you. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the stats. That way you guys can have a clear idea of what to expect from each gun, especially after this very interesting update. And then we're gonna go over to the gameplay with the attachments, because yes, the stats matter, but also the actual performance of it in game is not just about the TTK and about those stats. It's way more. And then finally we ended by rating all the best SMGs and how to pick the best one for you. Now let's get it. Alright, so for the stats, we're on sim.gg, and I got the BASP, the ISO 45, the Lachman, the MX9, the Vel, and the Vaznev, just because somebody requested in the comments before. And we got everything on 300 HP for an accurate time to kill. And just by looking at this graph, I'm pretty sure that you guys understand why I said there's no top 1 SMG, it's actually 2 or 3. So from 0 to 8 meters, the ISO 45, the Lachman sub, and the Vaznev 9K have really great time to kills, and it doesn't matter which one you pick at this point. There's barely any difference. But this is where things start to get interesting. From 9 to 11 meters, the MX9 dominates by a load with a 648 millisecond time to kill. Then it's followed by the Vel and then the ISO 45. And here you can clearly see that the Lachman sub and the Vaznev 9K are completely useless. And the 4th place here is the BASP. And then from 11 till 13 meters, the Vel is the best SMG out there, followed by the ISO 45 and then the BASP. So this is where things get a little bit tricky. Logically speaking, most people would say, oh, based on this chart, then I need to go with the Lachman sub or the ISO 45 or the Vaznev, because they had the best time to kill. But that's not true, because ask yourself, what map are you playing? What's your style? Are you aggressive? You always push and make sure it's as close as possible? Or do you like to be passive and you have some off-range fights? Are you playing solos, duos, trios, or quads? All of these things come into play and as a huge factor in what weapon you should pick. So let's get to the gameplay and all the attachments and decide from there. Starting off with the BASP, this is the second time it gets a buff, and I thought that's gonna be the meta, but sadly it wasn't. Yes, with the headshot multiplier, it does have a better time to kill, making it 2nd or 3rd, but there's one problem with that weapon, that it's too heavy. Like, without double time, it was slow, and with double time, I still felt really slow with an SMG. If I want to count on movement, if I want to count on doing things beyond just shooting straight, it made it really hard for me. But what's nice about the BASP is its consistency. You can rely on this weapon, you can expect it to deliver consistent damage, and if you hit a few headshots, you're gonna be rewarded for that massively. This is the loader that I use. I personally focus on having good strafe speed, because it's all about movement in this game, especially when it's way more minimal than it was in Warzone 1. And now for the second buffed weapon, the MX9. I think this is its 3rd, not 2nd buff, and I expected great things, but sadly there's one huge problem with this weapon. Its magazine is too small, and if you want to waste one attachment slot to make it even bigger, the max you can get to is 32 rounds. It felt really smooth, it was very consistent, and I actually enjoyed playing with it, and I did win a few fights even against top 3 weapons like the ISO and the Lachman sub. But sadly, there's two problems with it. The first one being that it's only the best at a very specific range, which is just 2 meters. And most of the times, your fights are not going to be limited to exactly 2 meters where you have the best TTK. And the second problem with it is its smag. Like, the best scenario for this weapon is solos and maybe duos. But beyond that, I don't advise anyone to use it because of the smag problem. And now for the third buff weapon, the Vel, or known as the MP7. To be honest, when I saw the update, I was like, yeah, it's definitely gonna be meta. This weapon was already strong, people were dropping insane clips with it, and now it's gonna be even better. But this is where I was actually disappointed. Out of all the tested SMGs, it probably has the second or the best movement in the category, but it wasn't consistent. Like, you either have to build it in a way where it has more damage at range, but the downside is going to be less movement, less mobility. Like we saw on the stats, it has the best time to kill on a very short and specific range, and most of the times I was losing my fights to ISO 45s and MP5s because of it. When it comes to movement, this is your go-to weapon. This is smooth as butter, it's very quick, it's very agile. Like, it's so smooth, it's giving me Rebirth vibes, especially with a new updated slide. It's just perfect for that. But if you want the best edge, and especially at the most common case scenario, which is going to be really close range fights, this is not the best. And now for the nerfed Lachman sub. The thing is, they nerfed the close to mid-range damage. Not the close range damage, close to mid. And for anything after 8 meters, it has one of the worst time to kills among all these SMGs. But when it came to consistency and something compatible with my playstyle, where I like being aggressive, I like closing in that gap, I didn't feel the nerf. Because it's only after 8 or 9 meters, and most of my fights are less than that. The MP5 is still actually really great, and this is the loadout, and I expect it still to be a tournament weapon. It's still that good. And last but not least, the untouched ISO 45. When I tried it, I expected it to be a little bit better than the Lachman sub, but a little bit worse than the Vel, but that is not the case whatsoever. First of all, it still has the top time to kill when it comes to 8 or 9 meters, and even after that, the damage drop-off isn't that big. Like, between 9 and 11 meters, the difference between it and the Vel and the MX9 is barely there. And then between 11 and 13 meters, the difference between it and the Vel is barely there. Then after that, it has a really good time to kill compared to all the other SMGs, which makes it an overall great SMG for all the scenarios. Even as a sniper support, this weapon slaps. Now that we got all that nerdy stuff out of the way, it's time to ask, what are the best SMGs and what is the best pick for you based on your playstyle? Out of these 5 great builds, the first one that has to go is sadly the MX9. That limited mag will only make it effective for solos or duos max. And with it only having the best time to kill between 9 and 11 meters, it doesn't make it that practical. Now, for a gun to be a fun gun and still have a very good competitive edge, 100% you should try it. But if you're going for very serious gameplay or ranked gameplay, yeah, just leave this on the side. Now, the second SMG that has to go is sadly the BAS-P. Yes, it got buffed for a second or a third time, but sadly it's still not enough. The time to kill on it is really bad compared to other SMGs, even up to 15 meters or a little bit more. And the other factor that made me decide this is it's very slow and clunky with that 50 round mag. But unlike the MX9, if you want to go for trios or quads, that 50 round mag is gonna get the job done at least. And now for third place, and this was really hard to pick, but it's the Vel 46 or the MP7. Listen guys, like, I know it got a lot of buffs and it feels really good and the movement is there. But if you think about it, it's only better than the MP5 between 9 meters and 13 meters. And even then, the difference isn't that big. So when it comes to practical use and where most of the fights are going to be at a close range of 10 meters or less, the MP5 is going to win. And now for the second place, obviously it's the Lachman sub or the MP5. And the only reason it's not in the first place is because after this nerf, after 9 meters, it becomes drastically worse and worse as the distance grows. But anything before 9 to 8 meters, it's one of the best time to kills and it will get the job done perfectly. And now, obviously, for the first place is the ISO 45. It didn't get buffed, it didn't get nerfed, but the reason it's the best weapon out there is because it's the most consistent at all the ranges. So based on all these different stats and clips and your playstyle, what is the best SMG for you? If you're a very passive player or like to play it safe at least, and when you have to push, then you push, I would recommend the Vel 46 or the MP7. But if you are that aggressive, sweaty, slide cancelling, well, kind of slide cancelling in this game, then I would suggest the ISO 45 over the MP5. As for the MX9 and BAS-P, if you want to just have fun and still have a really good weapon in your hands, go for them, of course. And last but not least, guys, if you found this video to be helpful and you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like and sub button. Next up, we're going to be diving into the long range meta because now it's completely different. I see some LMGs coming into the mix. I see some ARs coming into the mix. I don't think battle rifles are going to be the meta anymore, but we'll find out in the next video. So I'll catch you in the next one.